This is one heck of a box for a GPU, and rightfully so. Inside was one heck of a GPU, and probably the perfect one for your current gen SFF build. Welcome to Machines and More. The boxes that NVIDIA has been using for its 40 series Founders Edition cards are really neat. And today we're talking about the new 4070 graphics card. Got the Founders Edition card right here, and I've been very impressed by this card so far today. So I'm going to give you, how about 4 reasons why I think the 4070 GPUs in general might be the ideal ones for your next small form factor build. I've always been more of an NVIDIA 70 level card guy myself, having had the 2070, the 3070, 970, all those 70 cards, and now this one here. I have been waiting for the release of this one to jump into the Lovelace GPUs, and yeah, I might be a little bit partial to this level of card, but those preferences are firmly grounded in the fact that this channel is more focused on SFF builds, and especially those that cater to most of your 95% of use cases. One request: if you enjoy this type of content, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel, as it does help the channel grow. Alright, without further ado, reason number 1, the size. If you're an SFF enthusiast that's been following the GPU trends over the last few years, you'll probably bemoan the fact that cards have been growing in pretty much every dimension possible. You have 3+ slot thickness coolers, very long coolers, very tall coolers, you name it. When you're trying to fit a graphics card into a smaller SFF case, these more modern dimensions for the high-powered cards, they start adding up to downright incompatibility, or at minimum a very difficult build experience, as well as concessions for airflow and other components. Nowadays, case designers have been very creative in pushing the envelope here and there for the card capacity, but for smaller cards, they're always going to make your life easier. The good news with the 4070 is that the Founders Edition and the AIB cards that I've seen are at most 2.5 slots thick, if you are longer like the MSI Ventus and MSI Gaming, but there are plenty of compact 2-slot options on the market. Even if you are running a case that has a generous amount of space like our Test and our 200 case here, the use of a smaller 2-slot card means that airflow can be optimized by using 25mm case fans at the bottom, and also not having a large card section off a big portion of your cases off in the plus. Not to mention the build experience with a properly sized card is a lot easier, as well as opening up yourself to a wider range of case options. Number 2 is computing power. The 4070, it's not just a smaller card for small purposes. The computing power here is quite impressive, and in my opinion, this is going to be enough for most gaming uses, especially those that have 1440, and it's great for productivity use cases out there right now as well. Generally speaking, with NVIDIA, these 70 level cards tend to perform similarly to the previous generation's 80 level, or that flagship card. And when I benchmarked this one against the 3080, that was definitely also the case here. Of course, I am testing against an older 3080 with the 10 gigs of VRAM, but this gives you an idea here. Here the 4070 was quite a bit better in the synthetic testing and rendering, a bit better in games when tested with traditional rasterization as well. For ray tracing, tested with Minecraft RTX in a custom world with DLSS off, the card is a little bit of a bump up from the 3080, but truth is you'll often want to pair RT titles with DLSS when available, and the gap when that's enabled over the 3080 becomes really impressive. As more titles become compatible with the latest generation of DLSS, DLSS 3, you're going to see an even bigger benefit to having this card. If you are playing at 4K or your rendering needs tend to the more extreme of the spectrum, maybe this won't be the card for you, but for the majority of users, I think this will be a fantastic and completely adequate choice. Number 3 thing I like about this card is the reduced power consumption. Now, I'm not just talking about your power bill, which, yeah, that's a factor, but perhaps more important is what happens to all that waste heat, especially in an SFF system. If you look at the upper end of the spectrum, the 3080 was pushing 320 watts, and the 4080 kept that spec. And of course, the performance of the 4080, it's great, but this level of power consumption is a bit more difficult to manage in close quarters, more so because of the adverse impact on CPU cooling from the GPU's exhaust. With the 70 level cards in recent years, that power spec has been going up steadily. But interestingly, the 4070 bucks that trend, and it runs at about 200 watts total board power. Comparing against a 3080 in a system with a 5800X cooled by a Noctua U12A, in our 200 test system, the card temp, it's just one thing, but the effect on the CPU's cooling is especially noticeable. And that's one major benefit of being able to run an efficient card in your system. When you look at the card's thermals alone, though, the 4070 FE cooler, it's very impressive for how small this thing is. Running Heaven 4.0 here, the card's very, very cool. But even more impressive was that the GPU fans didn't need to spin very fast. They're only spinning at 1400 RPM, which is a very quiet level here. And with this level of power draw, your 2-slot AIB coolers, they should be satisfactory as well. Other than the reduced impact on your CPU cooling or the noise of the card and the noise of the cooling itself, there's the fact that you also don't need a big power supply here. When the 3080 was released, it coincided with a run on Corsair's SF750, at least in the SFF space. Since then, a few 850 watt units have been released, and now I'm testing Cooler Master's 1100 watt unit. But with the 4070, you don't need any of that. A 650 watt unit will work just fine. The total system power consumption while gaming, it's really quite moderate. And if you're just upgrading the card in your existing system, chances are you already have a suitable PSU, and that's easier on the wallet as well. Now, it's not the case with the FE card if you use the included adapter, but most AIBs, they are also coming equipped with a single 8-pin cable port, and a single cable makes for a clean build as well. Number 4, and the last one here, is pricing and availability. Well, this is a very much more affordable GPU, and you can actually buy one now. GPU pricing has come down closer to earth in the last year, and yes, the reference price for this FE card is $100 more than the price of the 3070 FE, which was $500. However, you might have a not too distant memory or nightmare of how hard it was to actually get that card, and the street price of the 3070 cards ended up being quite a bit higher than $500. The 4080 and 4070 Ti price tags are realistic when it comes to balancing supply and demand in the marketplace. But I think for what you get, the 4070 is priced a lot friendlier. And in spite of that, I still was able to pick this card up on launch day. And if I wanted to, the inventory was there still. In fact, at the time I'm shooting this, you can easily pick up a number of AIB cards at the $600 MSRP, and I fully expect this card to be quite easy to buy in the long run as well. So one small nitpick here about the FE card is that the 2 8-pin to 16-pin adapter cable, it's quite obnoxious. It sticks out quite a bit, and it's a lot more cable than the adapter that came with the 3070, which is just one cable. And if you don't have a 12V HPWR cable or a power supply that supports this cable, then you're going to have to deal with it. It's not exactly flexible either, so if you are working in tight spaces, make sure you account for the extra room with this particular card. And it's taken up quite a bit of space even in the NR200 here, almost the entire width if you don't flex or force the adapter in on itself. Okay, one thing specific to the Founders Edition version of the 4070 is that this is a blower style plus a flow-through section. And the blower style is usually not an issue, but the flow-through section creates some airflow considerations. For example, in our test NR200 case, that means the tower cooler has to be run as a rear intake to mitigate the impact from this flow-through section. That way, the tower won't take in all the exhaust heat, and in fact, it'll kind of push air towards the section, and then that'll be exhausted out through the top case fans. With a sandwich style case, that's going to have some implications as well. Typically, you don't want to choke off the flow-through section of the card, and that means you're going to want to space out the card if possible. For example, if you have a 3-slot capacity and this is only a 2-slot card, you can push it out 1 slot and give this some breathing room. I do have some videos on this topic here. I'll leave one linked right up here. There's also a bit of coil line here. It's not as bad as I experienced with the 3080 FE that I had, but that has been a fact of life in general for a lot of recent GPUs. But yeah, other than that, I'm really liking this iteration of the 70 level card. I do plan to continue testing with the 3080 going forward, but this 4070 along with the Ryzen 7600X will make its way into some SFF test builds for some broader implications when I test. If you do get one of these cards, let me know what you think. I'm curious about that. I will leave links for a few AIBs down below, so please also check those out. Please give a like, subscribe if you found this helpful. Thanks for watching.